through evolution and your genetics, you were born with everything that you can ever needed and wanted to become the person that you are. However,
Yep.
you still have to have a level of consciousness to apply your beautiful talents to do something in life. How many people do I know that are born gifted and they just waste their talent away? Welcome to the Break Free Podcast with your host, David Mancilla. This is another fabulous episode. Today we have all the way from Chicago, Justin Breen. Brother, welcome.
Yeah, 7662 Colby meets 8671. So this should be an interesting discussion on a global level for sure.
Wonderful. And we'll talk about that in a while, because I bet a lot of people don't know what you're talking about.
Right. They will.
So let's start with what do you do for a living, brother? We all know that you live in Chicago. Is that where you spend most of your time? And what do you do there?
Yeah, Chicago suburbs, and it's a place. It's a place, and my conversations are global, constantly global at this point. And I'm a simplifier, so I take all this complexity and simplify it. And the purpose of my life is to be a connecting superhero for every visionary, abundance, investment mindset entrepreneur, and share their stories with the world. So that's 100% of my day. Besides hanging out with my family, it's endlessly fun.
Beautiful. Let's talk about your family. Married, kids?
Yeah, so I found that visionary wackadoos like us, almost always, not always, but almost always are married to stabilizing humans at the highest level. So, I'm visionary wackadoo, multiple companies that are global. And then my wife is the kindest, most loving, empathetic human. She's a pediatrician and nicest person I've ever met. And then we have two really interesting sons who are 7 and 8. And they have her warmth and kindness and love and rules. And then they have my just go for it, just all out go for it. And it'll be very interesting to see how they evolve, for sure.
That is fascinating. What a blissful life, eh? You're so lucky.
Well, thank you. I know that, believe me. And, a lot of entrepreneurs care about revenue and employee count and office space. I don't care about any of that stuff. I never have. I was a journalist for 20 years. You go into journalism, you don't go into journalism for any of that stuff. And I only have 2 10Xs in my life because I'm a simplifier. One is experiencing life with my family. If you have a good family life, you have a good life, period. I haven't met anyone who doesn't have a good family life that doesn't have a good life. Never. And then 2 is network on a global level. So when you do that 10X, it's not 100,000X, you create endless opportunities for your network and yourself. And, the byproduct of that is I haven't done outbound sales or gimmicks or any of that stuff in years. I mean, you just create value for the highest performing people on the planet. They create value for you. It's very simple.
It's incredible how you see life, because people, including me, make it so complicated. And I can tell that you're a simplifier, because what you just did is you just narrowed down the 2 most important aspects of constant happiness. You narrowed it down in 5 minutes, 4 minutes.
Right.
Happy family life,
scheduled,
right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so we're scheduled to have a 35, 40-minute thing, and that's great. But all this other stuff is meaningless without those first 2. Certainly without the first one, everything else is. And, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of them that have let entrepreneur life destroy their family life. I will never be that person. Never. And I'm a dad/husband who happens to be an entrepreneur. I am not an entrepreneur who happens to be a dad/husband. There's a very fundamental difference between that. Fundamental.
It's beautiful. I was one of those guys. I almost destroyed my family because of my business.
I know. And now, well, here's an interesting thing, because I simplify things and I see how things work. And you come to Canada with no money in your pocket, and that's a survival instinct. And so survival instinct takes over, and then it grows and grows, but you still have survival instinct, and you don't break away from that. You don't break away. And I have found that right. I mean, you just answered the question, but I have found that kind of stuff is just winning the wrong game. So I know a lot of, billionaires and gajillionaires, and I always ask, how's your family? And not all, certainly not all, but a lot of them are like, I never spend time with my family or see them. And I just hear the hurt. I hear it and I see it. I'm like, I'm just not one of those people. I will never, I will, you and I are both in strategic coach. Here's the, big fan of strategic coach,
Yes.
but, we did, for those who don't know, strategic coach, I'm very confident saying top entrepreneurial group in the world. I mean, it just is. And there's this exercise called the moving future, where you look over the next 90 days, 4 or 5 goals or whatever. And all of my goals were family related. It had nothing to do with my business. I don't even the business is just a byproduct of having a good family life. It's just a good byproduct. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's how I've seen it. So.
What you touch a great point talking about survival. The issue with survival, survival is very, very fine for what it's worth at the right time.
Yeah.
So you
100%.
have to be in survival when you're starting up a business. You have to. There is no other way.
You have to. No other choice.
The problem is that if you stay and linger in survival longer than you need to, survival becomes ego. And
correct.
You have enough ego, it will eventually kill you. Right?
100%.
That's the thing, right?
Well, not only will kill you, but it'll destroy your family. And I'm just not. And, even for an entrepreneur, all entrepreneurs are outliers. I'm an outlier even among entrepreneurs. And again, our Colby scores are relatively similar, which is really rare. Most entrepreneurs like us, most of them have very high quick start. So boom, 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 boom. And then they have little to no follow through. So they're all over the place and they have to hire 1 million people to get things done. So that's ADD, diagnosed or undiagnosed. And then you and I both have high quick start, relatively high quick start, boom, 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 and high follow through. So say it, do it, say it. It just gets done. It just gets done. But, when I see things, I immediately do something about it. I don't hand it off to 300 people. I just immediately, I see the problem and I create a solution to it by hitting the brakes. Mm-hmm. I just do it. And I think that's what made me realize immediately or within a year or two that I don't need to survive. I'm good. So now family for sure first.
That's wonderful. So let's talk about your career. Where were you at 25 years ago?
So I'm 44. 25 years ago, I was probably drunk at my fraternity house or drunk at a bar. I got a full academic scholarship to the University of Illinois, and it's funny because half of my partners with my PR firm, they barely went to college. A lot of them didn't even graduate high school because that doesn't matter. But I got a full academic scholarship to college, and then I did graduate. I made it, but college was it was just there. And so 25 years ago, that's where I was. And I'm very glad social media didn't exist back then. I always think about today's social media and I'm like, oh, thank God it wasn't around when I was in college. But it wasn't, so fortunate about that.
That's amazing. And what made you go into journalism? Did you get a job in journalism right after college or not?
Yeah, so even in high school, I was doing it. So, and honestly, this will make sense, but I was a journalist before I was even born. And so what does that mean? I don't know if I told you this story before. Well, you heard it at the party I had. I think you've heard part of it, but, my father was 61 when I was born and he'd be 105 if he was alive now. And so he came from nothing, similar to how you came from nothing, but my father's very similar to your story. And he was a World War II hero. He was shot down 9 times in combat. Many times he got in the plane without a parachute. And so he kept a diary he kept a diary of his experiences fighting in the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest and the German-Belgian border. And I found the diary after he died. He died when I was 13. And I found it after he died. I write exactly like he does. Like it's different verbiage. I don't use the word Krauts or doughboys or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just boom, 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 result, 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 result. And so I just, it's just in my brain. And then my mom was at the party. I don't know if you got a chance to talk to her, but so she was 27 when I was born. And so 34-year difference. So when my dad was in his late 50s, he was driving on an expressway in Chicago, and a drunk driver went across the median and hit him head on. The drunk driver was killed instantly. My dad survived because he broke every bone in his body, but he survived. So you don't make excuses. You figure it out, right? And so then my mom was his nurse. Yeah, my mom was his nurse. So
that's how they met? They actually met in the hospital.
Right. So I was born with a story. Like, this is just in me at the highest level.
Oh my God.
It was interesting because my mom wanted, I don't usually tell this, but I think you'll appreciate it. My mom wanted him to date her mom because they were the same age, but he didn't have a family. And I think my father had been through so much in his life. The one thing he didn't have was a family. And I think the near fatal car accident finally convinced him to do it. And so I'm just and most of my days talking to people like you, like endless hustle people like you, endless survive mode. My mom has more hustle than anyone I've ever met, ever. She's the ultimate survive and thrive. The ultimate. What you've overcome, my mom has overcome. It's unbelievable. And so I'm just a combination of my parents. I mean, that's all it is. So I was born to be this person. I'm just the result of that.
Yeah, it's what you say is absolutely true. I mean, like through evolution and your genetics, you were born with everything that you can ever needed and wanted to become the person that you are. However, you still have to have a level of consciousness to apply
100%.
your beautiful talents to do something in life. How many people do I know that are born gifted and they just waste their talent away?
Waste it. And that to me is inexcusable. I don't understand it. And again, I'm a simplifier. So there's two reasons most people are miserable in life. Because again, I just take all this stuff and simplify it into patterns. That's just how my brain works. I don't know. It just does. So there's two reasons. One, people are doing something 8 to 10 hours a day that they hate to do or are not good at. So that would make anyone miserable. So that's sad. The second reason, which is the real tragedy is they actually find out what they like to do and what they're good at, and they never do anything about it. And that, to me, that's unacceptable. It's inexcusable. So yes, I have the genetics to be like that. But there's a test called PRINT, PRINT. If you haven't taken that, I'll send you the link for that. But it's your unconscious motivators, your unconscious. And you and I mean, if you don't have the same score as me, I'd be shocked. But unconsciously, I'm motivated to be strong and self-reliant and to succeed and achieve. So there's no thinking about it. There's no, I have to feel anything. It's just result.
Go and do it.
And you just do it. So I'm unconsciously motivated to be like that. And I think the reason why some people aren't like that is because unconsciously they're motivated to think about something or they're motivated to feel it. I don't have to feel anything. Just go, do it, get it done, result. So unconsciously, that's how I am. Yeah.
So do you know you wanted to be a journalist when you started college or not yet?
No, that's what I mean. So I was a journalist in high school. When I was one of the first photos ever taken of me, I was reading the Chicago Sun-Times, which is a newspaper here, on my mom's lap. I was like 6 months old. I would read the Chicago Tribune sports section with my dad when he was alive as a child. I mean, this is all I've ever wanted. I mean, I was a journalist for 20 years and created my entire business model based on how PR firms annoyed me for 20 years. So I started first company 4.5 years ago, and there's no difference between the journalism that I do now with the PR firm that I did as a journalist for 20 years. There's zero difference. There's none. Yeah.
Talk about education for 20 years to create something of so much value to so many people, right? Like I talked to some of your clients at the party that you invited me, in September, and they just admire
Good
you, dude.
people.
Like I don't know what you do for them, but they're like, we are so. This one lady told me we are so glad that we can afford Justin because he's doing wonders for us. That's what she said.
Well, so I don't get emotional rarely. I very rarely get emotional. I really appreciate you saying that. Means a lot to me. And at the highest level, there are no excuses, only investments. So if someone says, "What do you cost or charge?" I'll never talk to that person again because they're living in cost transactional world. And the people at the highest level, like you, look at everything as an investment. So I'm glad they said they're glad they can afford me. But I've had multiple people that are dirt broke that they just found a way to make an investment.
Mhm.
Because you don't make an excuse at the highest level. I have no tolerance for excuses. I just don't. Unconsciously, I'm motivated. But I guess most PR firms, they just annoy journalists. I was just annoyed by PR firms for 20 years. And so I saw that as a problem, created a solution to it, solved it, successful global company. And then I only partner with visionaries who live in abundance and look at things as investments, not costs. So it eliminates 99.9% of the population, but the 0.1%, the people like you, employ everybody else. So that's how I help the world. I just work with people like you who are grateful, glad they can afford it, will find a way to afford it. And then those are the ones that change the world. Those are the ones who will do it and make the investment, not make an excuse.
Yeah, incredible. Actually, one of my mentors told me once, the best way to conquer the island is to burn the boats. Burn the boats. You go into that island, you take the army out, and you burn the boat. So either you take the island or you die. And that's the determination that is required to build anything in life. By the way, it's the same
100%.
with family. Like if you are
100%.
dedicated, if you are really in, you'll figure out a way to make it prosper and happy and filled with love, doesn't it?
Well, so, it sounds simple, but people complicate things. And again, talk and ideas are totally meaningless to me without execution and action. So what do I mean by that? On my strength finders, Clifton Gallup strength finders, most entrepreneurs like us, they're very high in ideation, like top 5. They're idea. And I'm actually 32 out of 34 in ideation. I'm almost dead last. But if I have a good idea, my top 5 are activate, maximize, achieve, competition, responsibility. So result. And so I just posted this yesterday, actually, when we're recording now, it's early October. So just finished the 1-year anniversary of the first thing I do every single morning is I do a grateful journal for my wife, what I'm grateful for her the previous day. The most important thing for my wife is for someone to say thank you to her. I'm 34 out of 34 in empathy. So thank you to me is like, whatever, but for her, it's number 1. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the first thing I do every day is think about how grateful I am to her. And so I've done that every day for a year, and I'll do that the rest of my life, every single day. First thing I do every single day. And when you put that first, then all this other stuff takes care of itself. Just solves the problem.
So let me get this done. Like you are as far away as possible from needing to say thanks or receiving thanks, but your wife is her number 1 priority.
Number 1.
So that you still do it for her. Explain that to me. How can you actually create that?
Well, because I love my wife. I mean, without my wife, I'm in a ditch somewhere. I mean, and I met my wife August 28th, 2004. And I told my wife I loved her September 3rd, 2004, because I thought a week was, if I wanted to tell her August 28th, 2004, but I thought that would be too quick, even though I'm activate, maximize, achieve. So I waited a full week, and she knew I was serious. I loved my wife within 5 minutes of meeting her. I just knew. Just like when I started a company, first one, I knew. When I wrote a book, I knew. When I started a second company, I knew. But I mean, without my wife, I'm in a ditch. I'm still the drunk fraternity, successful journalist, but I'm still the drunk fraternity person without my wife, without question. There's no doubt. No doubt about that. So why, of course, every single day I'm prioritizing her, because without her, I'm in a ditch. So I
Now,
recognize that.
since we started the podcast, you mentioned the profile, and now you know what are your wife's priorities, and you know what are your priorities. Most people don't know what you're talking about. Can you just refrain? Where are you getting all this wisdom so that you can create your behavior in a way that is mutually
Yes,
beneficial for both of you?
man, that's really good. So Colby, Kate, that's a really good question. Really good. And thanks for landing the plane there. Usually landing the plane questions really annoy me, but that's a really good one. So Colby, Kolbe, the A index test, it's 55 US dollars. It takes 20 minutes. And the only thing I write down before I meet someone is their name and their Colby score, because I immediately know who I'm talking to. And it's not your personality. I don't care what your personality is. I want to know how your brain operates. And Colby shows you how your brain operates. And again, most entrepreneurs are at least a 7 quick start like me. You're actually the exception to this, which is interesting. You're the exception twice. So I'm the exception once in a big way. So most are 7 quick start. You're a 6. I'm a 7. And then most like the really, really high level ones are like a 2 or 3 follow through. You're a 6 and I'm a 6, which is really high. That's really high for a high performing entrepreneur. And so when I'm talking to someone, I just know how their brain's going to think and operate. I just know how it's going to operate. So that's the most important thing. To further answer your question about the relationship with my wife, Clifton Gallup Strength Finders. Again, I'm dead last in empathy. If my wife took that test, she'd probably be 1 in empathy. She'd probably be 1 or 2. And my business partner for the newest company, he's 3 out of 34 in empathy, which is really high. So I know I'm very low on empathy. And I just find people that are high in it. I find people that are high. So that's how I just see the patterns. And then to further answer your question, I will activate those patterns. I will do something about it. I won't just like know it and not do anything about it, because what's the point of that? I'll activate my life around those patterns because they're good patterns. Good patterns create good habits.
It's funny because, as you know, I'm a computer scientist. So I tend to see life in algorithms. Everything is algorithm.
100%.
If you understand how the algorithm works, then you can use it to your advantage to create your own purpose, right? For example, let's talk about books, right? Like, so I achieved, when I wrote my book and I put it on Amazon, I found somebody that knew how the Amazon algorithm works.
Me too.
So I achieved number 1 in my categories, in 2 categories in US, in 1 category in Canada for over 3 weeks. And that's almost impossible to do, but it's because we knew how the algorithm worked.
100%. Or you found someone who did it better. Right. So that's what I mean. We have very similar Colby scores, and we see lives in patterns and algorithms. And so the micro publisher I signed for my first book, she's an Amazon expert. So it's an international bestseller in 6 countries. It's number 1 for entrepreneurship in the US. The book came out in the middle of COVID, May of 2020. Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference. He's also a strategic coach, by the way. He did the foreword. And so I still do 2 to 3 media interviews for it every week. And it's a year and a half after it came out. And to really enhance the pattern, to really activate the activation. So that's great for me and my brand. I'm very grateful for that. But it's also great for my clients, because hosts want to interview me first for some reason. Then they're like, wait, you work with all these people? I mean, you literally got to meet some of them, but so then they want to interview all my clients too. So I'm like, okay. So somehow, because of the book, it's just a key that opens up endless doors. And in my case, it's a key that opens up endless doors for me, but then also for my clients/partners, which has been amazing. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. Yep.
Tell me about your book, Epic Business. I see it in your background. Why did you decide to write a book, number 1? Number 2, how did you came about to be so successful? You already spoke a little bit about it, but you are a journalist. And by the way, you are the only journalist that I know, and you're brilliant at it. So tell me, what was that process and why did you do it?
Well, one, thank you. My wife taught me how to say thank you, so thank you for that.
That's
I'm
awesome.
an entrepreneur who happens to be a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I don't like journalists who are journalists have no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, you're an entrepreneur who happens to be in tech. You know, you're not a tech. You're an entrepreneur who can see algorithms. There's a fundamental difference between people like us and then employees who work in companies that people like us start. Fundamental difference. And so, you know, most people write books and they're meaningless because there's no meaning behind it. And I'm very low in ideation, but if I have a good idea, activate, maximize, achieve at the highest level. So October, the anniversary is coming up for this. So October 16th, 2019, October 16th, 2019 was my company's 30-month anniversary, the first company. Started with zero business background, zero. Now I have a global firm that only works with people like you, or the ones who will make the investment to become someone like you. Okay, so I posted 30 things that I learned in the first 30 months from 30 of the top entrepreneurs on the planet. So at the time, I think I had 38,000 followers on social media, and everybody's like, oh, write a book. I'm like, okay, good idea. Maximize, achieve. So wrote the book in 43 days, hired a top micro publisher, Amazon algorithm expert. Got Chris Voss to do the foreword. Very grateful for that. Anyone who knows anything knows never split the difference. Chris Voss. I mean, so validates the book. And so each one of those things is a chapter in the book. And just like my dad's diary, because I was born to be this person, it's just boom, 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 boom. There's no fluff or nonsense. You just, here you go, result. So it all comes together.
It's beautiful. Epic business. So it's basically those 30 things that you learn in your first 3 months of business, right?
Well, and yes. And, most people, they don't even want to know, or they don't even want to be somebody like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. It's too it's impossible to even think like that. But they can visualize being someone like me, where you see your family and friends whenever you want to, you do what you like to do, what you're good at, you run. When I wrote this book, I only had one company. Now I have two. But they're like, oh, you have this great company that only works with, I work 0 hours a week. Okay, so they want that life, but they don't know, they have no idea how to do that. So I'm like, okay, here you go. This is how I did it. And it's a good algorithm. It's a good formula. I mean, it's successful for me. It's been successful for a lot of my clients. It's successful for a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know in Strategic Coach and elsewhere. So that's why I did it, because I'm like, people don't know how to do it. So here's a simple solution. Now do you have the guts to do it? Now do you have the guts to do it and activate it? And that's what thins the herd. That's what thins it.
Tell me about that transition, because you were an employee for 20 years, right? Over 20 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you decided to open up your own business. For me, that's one of the things that I admire from you the most, because I was an employee for 10 years before I took a leap of faith. And I knew that if I would have stayed 2 or 3 more years on my employment, I would have never had the guts to burn all the breachers and burn all the ships and just go get the island. So you,
Right.
after 20 years, number one, why did you jump into business? And number two, how do you create the emotional stability and energy to do it?
Right. So without my wife, I'm in a ditch, right? So that's what I mean. Grateful journal to her every week. So, again, most people can't do this because if most people would love to have this life, but they can't overcome depression, the highest level of anxiety you can imagine, bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy, or likely and or possible traumatic experience as a child or young adult. I haven't met one entrepreneur at the highest level. I'm not talking about small business owners. I'm talking about people like us that hasn't overcome at least one of those things. If not, I'm 3. The all 4 ones. There's a lot of all 4 ones in Strategic Coach 10X with us and in Abundance 360, which I'm also in. There's a lot of all 4s. But anyway, yeah, so I'll give you the simple timeline. So February 10th, 2017, I was working full-time as a journalist, had a 5-minute meeting with company's owner and editor, and they cut my job salary in half. I hadn't done anything wrong, and just that's what happens. So tried to find a job, couldn't find a job. Incorporated April 16th, 2017. And then over the next 6 weeks, reached out to 5,000 people to find first 5 clients. So 1 out of 1,000 said yes. So 4,995 rejections for 5 yeses. Most people can't do that. I mean, they could if they could do that, they would do it. But I'm genetic, I can do it. So whatever, it's entrepreneur life. I mean, coming to Canada from where you came from, Central America, with $20, you just do it. So, and then got a 5th client, resigned the next day, and then Robert Feeder, he's the top media columnist in Chicago. Did a story. I'd started my own firm a couple days later. So that was just to get the company started. I mean, that, and then the worst 50 days I've ever had in corporate, the worst day I ever had in corporate, which was also my best day. That was when I had my job salary cut in half. So worst day, it was actually the best day. That's not even in the top 50 worst days of being an entrepreneur. Maybe not even in the top 100, because I've been doing this 4.5 years now. People if you can't handle those 4 things, then don't become an entrepreneur, because you will go through those at least one. I haven't met one person who hasn't overcome at least one of those. If you know someone, introduce me. I'd like to meet that person, but I haven't met one yet.
I think it's worth to emphasize those 4 things, because people get into entrepreneurship for the wrong reason.
100%.
Right? And the world needs teams. Like, everybody in my teams loves working for me, and they are in the right place at the right time. And by the way, I help anybody that wants to create their own business inside ISU, because I believe if they have the calling, why wouldn't I help them? Right? But at the same time, the great majority, they enjoy working with me, right?
They need to follow up on visionary people like us. Thank God, because the world needs more integrators and visionaries. If everybody was like us, something would get done, but you need people to follow through. And the world needs a small percentage of people like us to create the things that someone else can enjoy being in. Like most people can't create their own future. So they need people like us to help create the futures for them. And that's great. That's great. And then, to your point, some people within those organizations will be able to create their own futures from that. But most people can't do that. And that's fine. That's fine.
So what are those 4 things that you need to overcome in order to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, if you want to put these in the show notes, I wrote an article for Inc. magazine for this. Because when I posted this a while ago, people were like, "Oh my God, this is very profound," and simplifying the patterns. So I can send you that link if you want to post it. But so the 4 things, again, I have never met one entrepreneur at the highest level, not nickel and dime business, not small business, at the highest level that hasn't overcome at least one of these 4 things. Most are 2 or 3. And there's a lot of all 4s. The all 4s are really successful. So 1 is bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy. 2, depression. 3, the highest level of anxiety that you can imagine. And 4, likely and or possible traumatic experiences as a child or young adult. That's it. That's entrepreneur life. So you get to this point where we're at, but if you're going to go through at least one of those 4 things, if not all 4, by the way.
I think I did all 4.
Yeah, so it's always funny, because I talk to people like you. Most of my day is talking to people like you, because your brains like yours endlessly fascinate me. And then I always say the 4 things, and then usually they're like nod, or they count on their fingers, and then they hold up 4 fingers. Then they hold up, I'm all 4, and I'm 3 out of the 4. The only one, knock on wood, I've never had to worry about is bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy. I can't imagine that happening, but maybe it would. But to simplify that, I really feel to be up here, you have to, if some people can see my hands, you have to be up here, you have to understand what it's like to be down there. I don't think you can get up here without understanding being down here. I haven't met the exception yet. So again, if you know somebody, introduce me to that person.
But you know what though? Like, if you happen to overcome it, life is beautiful. Life
100%.
is endless. Life is freedom. Life is my
freedom.
life. Complete
life is
freedom.
Total freedom. So that's why I wrote the book, because people want that freedom. They just don't know how to do it, or what they're. And one of the multiple parts of the book are what you're going to have to overcome. And then my favorite book, my dog chewed it up, but I'll hold up the second cover because the dog chewed up the first one. But Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh yeah.
Which is of course, yeah. Everyone like you is like, oh yeah, of course. And so for those who don't know, Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust. I think it's sold 12 million copies now. and it's the most profound book I've ever read. And the key thing to simplify it is, actually, I'll read the passage because your audience there's no doubt they'll appreciate this. Here it is. So the prisoner who had lost faith in the future, his future was doomed. With his loss of belief in the future, he had also lost his spiritual hold. He let himself decline and become subject to mental and physical decay. So in that case, the prisoner who had lost the future, that they died, this concentration camp. And I think in entrepreneur world, when you lose the future, you just go away. So that's why I'm always trying to build a bigger and better future, because it just keeps the bigger and better freedoms. So always bigger and better future.
Have you heard about this experiment where they put a mouse in a pocket of water without any light, complete darkness, and the mouse drowns almost instantly? And then they put another mouse in the same pocket of water, but they put a little hole on top so that there is light that shines. The mouse lasts like 10 times longer because it's got hope. It sees the light, and that gives them a better future, the opportunity for a better future. Isn't that incredible?
Well, it's amazing. And I think to simplify what we're talking about is the people that can't find that light or create their own light, they just drown. So that's why you need to, if there's light out there for you, find it and look for it. And then if there's not, you create it. You burn the island, you burn the ships down. You figure out a way to make that light. Because without the light, you can't find meaning in life. I'm convinced of that, not only because of reading that book, but I just see how the top folks in the world are constantly creating new little pockets of light for themselves. So thanks for sharing that. That's perfect. Because that's what we are. We're just experiments. I mean, that's what we are. So you can either be experimented on or you can create the experiment. I just choose to create the experiment. That's what I do.
Another thing that you remind me of is when you said that the worst day on your job life is the best day of your life now, because it's the one thing that motivated you to become who you are now, right?
By far the best day.
Right?
Yep.
So,
and the worst.
That's something that I really analyze when I'm going through hell. It's like, okay, this is horrible, but I know that if I actually create lessons for what's happening in my life, whether I'm responsible of it or not, this is going to become the best thing that could ever happen to me, because I'm going to learn so much from this, right?
Yep.
And that's the mentality that you need to have. Now, having said that, though, it's easy to say, very hard to do when you're under that much pressure, when you are crossing the river, right? And the water is freezing, and you see the other end of the river, but you're in the beginning and you don't know what to do. And it's like, what do I do now? Right?
Well, it's an interesting thing, because this is also from Man's Search for Meaning. But to be sure, man's search for meaning may arouse inner tension rather than inner equilibrium. However, precisely such tension is an indispensable prerequisite of mental health. So the point is, to have that tension, it's actually, you have to have it. Otherwise you can't. So you have to cross the river to find the meaning. You have to be in the cold water, or maybe it's above your eyes, and you have to swim through it to find the meaning. So I turn back to that when I'm like, oh man, this is so annoying, or there's all this tension, because I'm like, oh, this is actually important. This is actually essential, not important. You must have it. You must have it. So flipping the script on that, as you've done multiple times, that's the way to do it. It's just, you see it, but you flip the script to your advantage to understand what it really means.
It's beautiful. Brother, one last question. I'm very conscious of your time, and thank you so much for dedicating this hour to us.
Real honor. Real honor.
You have already enlightened me, so this is so worth it already, because if one person gets enlightened, that's enough. And I am a better person after these 45 minutes. So one last question. If you had access to write something on a billboard on the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy question. And the first line of my book after the foreword is, if you don't put your family first, put the book down. I can't help you. So that's it. Put your family first, or I can't help you. That's what I would put.
Beautiful. My God, thank you so much, brother, for being with me. Please keep being awesome. Tell me about Abundance 360 before you go. What's that hat about?
One, you would love it. Two, I can do an intro for you after this if you'd like. Three, to land the plane, the level I'm at, I think it's $20K a year. I'd easily invest $50K. And the level I'm at, 99% of the folks are running $10 million to $10 billion companies. They let me in there, one, because I made the investment. Two, my mindset and network are global, world class. So if I'm not in a room like that, I get bored very easily. And then 30 to 40% are strategic coach members, but it's 10X and free zone, the higher level of strategic coach people like us. So, and it's the top tech, AI, health, longevity. It's like the top futuristic people on the planet in that room. So if you want an intro for that, I'm happy to do it. You would love it. You would love it.
Yeah. I am actually signing up this month.
So. Oh, there you go. You're perfect. You are the ideal. You're the ideal. And then how my brain works with that is most of the folks in that are futuristic ideators. So they're all over the place. And then my brain immediately simplifies and maximizes for them. And so it's perfect, just perfect collaboration. But I need to be in a room like that so I can understand the future. Otherwise,
fantastic.
I just need to be around. Right. So you'll be in heaven in that group.
Well, Peter Diamandis showed up in my life before any other mentors did. And I read his book Abundance, and actually it changed my mentality. I'm always a positive guy, but that book.
And that's my hat right here.
Oh, yeah, it's
abundance.
For anybody that wants to realize how the world is really operating right now. Read that book, because the problem is that media feeds on fear because fear sells, because it's survival instinct, right?
That's exactly what it is. So that's why, real quick, because what you just said is very profound. So like Inc. and Forbes and all these places have done articles on me, and I'm grateful for that. But really, that's just an ego thing. And then podcasts like this are replacing mainstream media for three reasons. And, because again, I simplify and see patterns. So one, the entrepreneur or the host is an entrepreneur like you, not a journalist. So they're coming from a place of abundance, not scarcity. They're not a business journalist trying to save their job and trying to get page views by, a drive-by thing. So that's one. So the host is someone like you, not a journalist. Big difference. I'm an entrepreneur who's a journalist, not a journalist. Big difference. Two, you can do a deep dive on someone, 30, 45 minutes. It's not a drive-by 3-minute interview on TV, 5-minute interview on radio. So you really get to know the person. Three, while the audience might not be as large quantity-wise, it's far more quality audience. So my clients are constantly on podcasts like this, because podcasts, to simplify my simplification, are transactional and transformational platforms for entrepreneurs. That's what they are. That's what this is. That's what it is.
Beautiful. Brother, thank you so much. People want to find you and hire your services, your amazing services. How can they find you?
Yeah, thanks. It's funny because my new company is LinkedIn without the BS. That's what it is. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I have about 27,000 followers there. So Justin Breen on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn, but most of it's spam. But Justin Breen on LinkedIn would be great. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, brother. Again, have a wonderful rest of the week and keep being awesome and abundant.
Dude, you're the man. What a great, I'm just following your lead. So thanks for everything that you're doing.
Blessings, brother. Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.